Hello boys, welcome back to another session of online biology video tutorials, and this session is meant for class 12th biology students, and this is for 28th June 2021. As you all know, we have successfully completed chapter 1 and we are entering into chapter 2, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. This chapter is not only important for the sake of the weightage of the marks, almost 5 marks will be there in your board exam, but also you can increase the beauty of your home by knowing this and helping the plants to reproduce among themselves so that you have a lot of varieties in and around your house in the form of a garden. So basically the sexual reproduction takes place in flowering plants through flower. So that is the reason why we say that the flower is the reproductive organ in plants. So the organs are specialized to perform sexual reproduction in all the flowering plants or flowers. And as you know, we say angiosperms are flowering plants. So flowering plants are the dominant plant form on land and they reproduce by sexual means. Often their most distinguishing feature is their reproductive organs, commonly called flowers. Flowering plants, as we call them as angiosperms, use sexual mode of reproduction. Reproduction in plants mainly revolves around the flower, which has both male as well as female gametes. All the parts of a flower help in the process of reproduction, although some of them are sterile. To understand about sexual reproduction, we need to look through its reproductive organ, that is flower. So let's see this. So we are taking the vertical section of the flower here, vertical top to bottom, to understand various holes, WHORLS, holes, okay, rounds. An organ that is arranged in the form of a round 360 degrees. So we go with the first hole, that is calyx. Calyx here down. Normally this will be green in color, and this is calyx. When we say it refers to group of sepals, and the number of sepals vary. In some flowers there will be 3, in some flowers 5, 7, 9 and n number, and sometimes all are fused like a bunch. So the group of sepals which are green, normally green in color, are called calyx. Then comes corolla, that is the petals, very colorful and fragrant, means nice smelling parts, that is petals. Here also you must have observed in your own garden that some of the flowers will have 3 petals, some of them 5, some of them 7, and in rose, gulabi, you must have seen many. So basically petals are meant for attracting butterflies, insects and other things to help in pollination. So that is the role they play. And of course aesthetic sense, beauty of the flower, everything is because of the petals. And then third hole is stamens, that is we call them as androecium. Let me write androecium, ANDROECIUM, androecium means group of stamens, male reproductive organ, androecium. Here also you can see in the stamen you got a filament, long filament, and then the head region. So here you can see the anther. So anther and filament together is stamen, and in the anther there is breaking. Now we can name this as anther, and this should be the filament. Okay, you can make a correction. And then you got female reproductive system, that's called gynoecium, and gynoecium carpel we say, carpel or pistil we say. So here let me write, fourth whorl in a flower is Gynoecium, G-O-N-O-E-C-I-U-M. Gynoecium is female reproductive system. And this system has got a part called pistil, or it is also called carpel. C-A-R-P-L, carpel. And the carpel consists of the stigma. This is stigma, okay, and this tube-like structure is style, and this bulged portion is ovary. This is ovary, okay, this is ovary, right? So a pistil or a carpel consists of three things. What is that? Stigma, style, ovary. SSO is equal to carpel or pistil, and this makes gynoecium. So you got four whorls. Whorl number 1, calyx. Whorl number 2, corolla. Whorl number 3, androecium. Whorl number 4, gynoecium. So in a flower, there will be four whorls, and these four whorls are this. Hence we say flower, we say complete flower. Stamens and carpels respectively represent male and female reproductive organs of a flower. Next. Now you can see here the stamen, filament and anther, what I said just now, and the carpel, stigma, style, ovary, second, and then you got sepals, calyx and petals, corolla. So 1, 2, 3, 4 whorls. And based on the position of the ovary, we have got varieties of flowers. Already you are familiar with this in class 11th. Hypogynous flower, perigynous flower. Epi means upon, the ovary is superior, epigynous flower, superior ovary flower, inferior ovary flower, and the ovary is at par with the thalamus, then we say perigynous. And similarly, you know this stigmatic region, that is the primitive carpel looks like this, and when it becomes a specialized carpel, you got three parts, that is stigma, style and ovary. And then the stamen, the primitive stamen will be like this with pollen sacs, and the specialized stamen will have a filament with the bilobed or n-lobed anthers. Similarly, if all the ovaries are fused together, then we say apocarpus, syncarpus, then you got hypocarpus flower. And when we take the longitudinal section, you can see the presence in that bulged portion. This is stigma, this is style, this is stigma, this is style, and you got that bulged portion which is ovary. And when we take the section, vertical section of the ovary, you can see the presence of locules, means rooms, and in each room there will be ovules, either 1 or 2, mono or biovulate. And when we take this section of the pollen grain, we can see the transverse section, TS of anther. We can see the number of rooms also here, plus pollen grains. So basically all this must be background for this chapter. So again we are saying here the ovary structure, vertical section, ovules, locules, all that, sepals, petals, pistil, stigma, all that. Now we go to the flower parts and functions. What are the various functions that we have seen all the parts? Flower consists of following parts. Calyx, commonly known as group of sepals. These leaf-like structures, leaflets, protects the flower when it develops from bud. Corolla, these are the bright and colorful petals of the flower which attract insects and birds who are the agents of pollination. Next, androecium. It is the male reproductive flower parts, also known as stamens. Stamen consists of two parts. One is the anther, second one is the filament. Anther is four-lobed sac-like structure responsible for pollen formation. Pollen grains are formed. Whereas the tube-like structure is called filament, thread-like or tube-like structure that are attached to anther, and they keep the anther in place. That is the function of androecium. And then gynoecium, the female reproductive system, also called carpel or pistil. So the female reproductive parts of the flower, namely carpel, is made up of three parts. That is, we can say first stigma. It is attached to the top of the carpel where the pollens from other flowers sit in there. And then style, it is a tubular structure that connects the ovary and the stigma. It is responsible for the transportation of pollens from stigma to the ovary and holding the stigma in place. And out of the three, most important is ovary. Ovary is the female reproductive organ. The ovary is a chamber where ovules, that is female gametes, are stored and they are waiting for fertilization. Now, how exactly this takes place? The process of sexual reproduction. Now, you can see here vertical section of the flower, matured flower on sporophyte plant, and here I have to tell you again this N, 2N and 3N. N number means haploid. Haploid means only one set of chromosomes will be present. Like for example, in our case, we have got 46 chromosomes. This 46 chromosomes will be present in the form of two sets. So 46 in two sets means 2 into 23. So that 23 number is called haploid. And diploid is 2n, 2 into 23, 46. So every cell present in our body is diploid except the sperm. Sperm will be haploid. Similarly, in a female, every cell present in the female body is diploid except ovum. Similarly, some plants will have triploid, 3n. That is, 3 sets of chromosomes will be there. Normally that takes place in a structure called endosperm, which will be very useful as nutritive tissue. So for growing embryo, this endosperm will be used. So that's why it is 3n, triploid condition, right? Keeping that in our background, when we take up the vertical section of the flower, you can see first the male reproductive system. That male reproductive system is called stamen. So a stamen is the male reproductive unit of a angiosperm flower. It consists of anther and filament. Two parts will be there. Anther is usually bilobed, as you are saying. Lobe means room. 2 rooms are there, with each lobe having 2 theca. So we say dithecous means wall, thecus, dithecus. Another consists of 4 pollen sacs or microsporangia. So microsporangial wall has 4 types of layers. The microsporangia will have 4 layers. One is the epidermis. This is 1 cell thick and protective in function. Endothecium, single layered. Cells have cellulose thickening with a little pectin and lignin in some cases. It helps in dehiscence, means pollen grains will be on maturity released into the air. Then you have got middle layers, 1 to 6 layers will be there. They degenerate during maturity of the anther. And the most important one you must remember is tapetum. Tapetal cells are nutritive. By these cells, the ubish bodies are produced which help in the ornamentation of microspore wall. A compound, sporopollenin, you must remember this, sporopollenin, is secreted by ubish bodies which is deposited in the exine of microspore wall. As each cell of the sporogenous tissue is capable of giving rise to microspore tetrad, each one is a potential PMC. What is the PMC? Pollen mother sac cell, pollen mother cell or microspore mother cell. So from these antheridial cells, every mother cell that is generated is called either PMC or MMC. What do you mean by PMC? Pollen mother cell. MMC, microspore mother cell. So each microspore mother cell will undergo meiosis. And you know, at the end of the meiosis, how many daughter cells will be formed? 4, as all of you know. And one mother cell, microspore mother cell, by undergoing meiosis will form 4 microspore mother cells or 4 microspores. And here what you have to remember is this PMC is 2n, okay, diploid, whereas the product that is formed, offspring, is n number haploid because it is meiosis. So this is how every cell present in the anther will undergo meiosis and form 4 microspores. And imagine how many microspores will be formed in the anther. So many microspores will be formed. Similarly, in the case of ovary, each ovarian cell will undergo meiosis because ovarian cell is 2n diploid, and when it undergoes meiosis, that forms what is called megaspore. Remember here, in the case of male reproductive system, it is microspore. Normally we say pollen grain. Here it is megaspore. So this, out of the 4, 1 will only survive, 3 will degenerate. So we say surviving megaspore. So when the plants become matured, flower becomes matured, male reproductive organ becomes matured, female reproductive organ gets matured, each cell present in male as well as female reproductive organs will undergo meiosis. As a result, microspores will be formed in anther, megaspore will be formed in ovary. So this much you must remember. And once this is formed, the formation of microspore is called Microsporogenesis. So I repeat, each cell of the sporogenous tissue is capable of giving rise to microspore tetrad. Tetrad means 4 cells. Each one is a potential MMC or PMC. The process of formation of microspores from PMC or MMC is called microsporogenesis. And thanks to meiosis for this. Without meiosis, neither microsporogenesis nor megasporogenesis can take place. As the anthers mature and dehydrate, the microspores dissociate from each other and develop into pollen grains that are released with dehiscence of anther. Now you can see same thing. These pollen grains through dehiscence fall on the stigma. Look at that stigma. And once it falls on the stigma, once the conditions are set, favorable conditions are set, the pollen grains will start producing pollen tube. And you can see tube inside the tube. 2 tubes will be there. One tube is the tail, another is the pollen tube. And this pollen tube grows further, enters into ovary. So the pollen germination takes place once the conditions are favorable, and this requires a lot of glucose also. And once the pollen grains start germinating, form pollen tube, now the pollen germination microspore will have 2 nuclei, male nucleus 1 and male nucleus 2. Okay, so that much you remember now at present. Similarly, the ovarian cells also undergo meiosis and form megaspores, and the megaspores will be present in the ovary. They will be waiting for the pollen tube, or they will be waiting for the male nucleus 1 or male nucleus 2 to reach the ovary through pollen tube. So the egg is n number and the male nucleus 1 also is n number. So pollen grain protoplast is uninucleate in the beginning, but at the time of liberation it becomes 2 to 3 celled. Wall or covering of pollen grain is called sporoderm. It has 2 layers. Each pollen grain has got 2 layers, outer exine and inner intine. The outer layer exine is thick and sculptured or smooth. It is made up of sporopollenin. You must remember this word. Sporopollenin. P-O-L-L-E-N-I-N. Sporopollenin. Okay, N-I-N. I'll write here. Sporopollenin. So So this is very resistive to chemical and biological decomposition. So pollen wall is preserved for long periods in fossil deposits. At certain places, the exine remains thin. These thin areas are known as germ pores. When they are circular in outline, and germinal furrows when they are elongated. Whereas the intine is thin and elastic. It emerges out as the pollen tube. Remember, intine forms the pollen tube. Intine forms the pollen tube from the germ pores during germination. Pollen grain is the first cell of male gametophyte. The size of the nucleus increases and it divides mitotically to produce a bigger vegetative cell or tube cell and the smaller generative cell. The vegetative cell is bigger and has abundant food reserve and a large irregularly shaped nucleus, whereas the generative cell is small, spindle shaped with a dense cytoplasm and nucleus. So this is how the male gamete will be formed with all the structures, and on the other hand the female gamete, that is megaspore, is ready, and that is because of the presence of MMC. Again, here when we say MMC, it is megaspore mother cell. Okay, it is megaspore mother cell. There it is microspore mother cell. Here also we write that it is because of MMC, but don't get confused that MMC is microspore, so it is better you remember pollen mother, and here it is megaspore mother cell because megaspores are formed by undergoing the meiosis. And the process of formation of megaspores from the megaspore mother cell is called Microsporogenesis. Just like how we call formation of microspore as Microsporogenesis, formation of megaspore is also called Megasporogenesis. Ovules generally differentiate a single megaspore mother cell in the micropilar region of the nucellus. Okay, so for this we need to understand the structure of ovule, and that we will